Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Tuesdays with TFE, our weekly yacht racing news and views show. Welcome to the Beach Street Yacht Club in San Francisco's Marina District, where it is a fabulous day. We have Julia with us again. Julia, welcome. Our studio's been rearranged a little bit again. Again, but we keep, incrementally. Each week we try to improve step by step. So welcome back. Thanks for joining us. David James, sorry about the loss of your mother. Julia and I were at David's mother's celebration of life. Very nice memorial service over in Sausalito yesterday. Hello to Roger Lockhart, Peter Sangmeister, one of the Sangmeister's sons. Hello to you, Julia and Jay Hanfield, and 5 other people. Welcome to all of you. Ted Ryman, are you back from South Africa, or are you still in South Africa, Ted? Rick Hayes, cheers. Thank you, sir. Tom O'Keefe, the California Offshore Race Week was fantastic, but the SoCal 300 was a blast. Sorry for those that were injured. Yes. Tom, we have an update on that. The latest news, there's statements just been issued on the lady who got knocked in the head, and we'll bring you that news in a moment. Okay, let's get on with this. Our 88th show, closing in on 100 live shows since we started this just really a year ago, Julia. It's hard to believe, isn't it? So today we're going to talk about the Cal 300 Medevacs and the Volvo Ocean Race really being too close to call with just 2 legs left. It is close to call. Some latest news, mostly on television, but it's important for the America's Cup, and I think a very good development for this 36th edition of the Cup. And then the Marseille Madness, as I call it, the World Cup, this crazy series of events that World Sailing is trying to make happen. The 4th and final of this 2018 series is happening in Marseille starting today, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Ready to go? Everybody comfortable? Let's take a quick look at the website. We were fairly, we like to just bring you breaking news or major news, and there wasn't a lot this week except this SoCal 300, which was a bit of a deal because of the 2 injuries. 2 sailors off 2 different yachts in that race from Santa Barbara to San Diego, which started, Thursday afternoon, and most of the yachts had finished by Friday night. It's the 3rd of 3 different regattas in the so-called California offshore racing. Well, let's go. We can go look at it if you want. We can go right over here to the website. And we broke the news, thanks to several of you, but particularly Peter Houston, who sent us the Coast Guard report. And the Coast Guard medevaced 2 different sailors, as we said, off 2 different yachts racing from Santa Barbara to San Diego on overnight, Thursday night, and Friday morning. It was breezy, and it was a bit rough. It was in the 20s, gusting to, we hear, 38 knots, so into the high 30s, with 8 or so foot seas. And Thursday evening, a Coast Guard helicopter crew medevaced a 31-year-old man named from the yacht called Brett Walda 3, a Rogers 46 out of Waikiki Yacht Club, owned by Bob Pethick, when they were south of Santa Cruz Island. You sail out from Santa Barbara around the islands and down. In a separate incident, early Friday morning, the Coast Guard medevaced a 48-year-old woman from Jim Puckett's Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace is a custom FAR 57 sailing out of California Yacht Club in Marina del Rey, and their accident was when they were approximately 70 miles west of San Clemente Island, because you sail out around to a virtual waypoint, turn that mark, and then come back into San Diego. So that's what happened there. Both yachts were racing in the SoCal 300 that started, as we said, off Santa Barbara Thursday, and were headed for San Diego. And the SoCal 300 is one of the 3 events that comprise the 2018 California Offshore Week. And it's in, its 5th or 6th year, and there were a fair few entries and a nice event. So there's the Coast Guard report. If you want to go to the website, you can have a look at that. But we heard almost immediately from Erin Gatling, who is the wife of Bretwalda 3's injured crew Casey Schilling, after he got his leg wrapped up in a sheet and in one of the ropes that controls the sails, and almost got winched into his leg almost got winched into the winch, so I hear. So he is in and out of the hospital. Let's go look at the rest of the details we have from this. But first off, we have dramatic footage from the Coast Guard of the rescue of let me get back to my camera here so we can talk about it, of the rescue of this lady by helicopter on Friday morning off of the other yacht, and the name of that yacht was Amazing Grace. But do take a look at this. Let's get to that video here. There we go. That's where we want to be. And this is the Coast Guard video. Amazing job that these folks do. And this is early Friday morning. You can see it's not bright light. I think it's at 4:30 or so when they flew out from San Diego. And Ann Walton Teeter of Santa Monica, California, sustained a serious head injury during the early morning of June 1 while crewing on the sailing vessel Amazing Grace, competing in the SoCal 300 regatta, sailing from Santa Barbara to San Diego. Now, this is what I'm reading from now is an official statement released by the family through San Diego Yacht Club just before we went to air. So this is new news, and you're hearing it first here. As we watch this video of the Coast Guard rescue, the swimmer is already in the water, the rescue swimmer, famously good, amazing guys and gals in our United States Coast Guard. And they lower the basket now. But I'll continue reading from the statement. The injury happened nearly 120 miles west of San Diego as the boat prepared to round a virtual waypoint for the final leg to the finish. The accident was not witnessed by other crew, or so the family says, as it was dark and she was tending a line for the running backstay on the stern of the boat during the maneuver. She was found immediately after the jibe. Apparently they jibed, and the boom, of course, the bottom of the mainsail, came across, and who assessed her injury accurately and called for urgent Coast Guard evacuation. She'd apparently gotten hit in the head badly. In the interim, she was given expert first aid by one of the crew, who monitored and protected her until the Coast Guard helicopter arrived. Boat rigging and ocean conditions made an evacuation directly from the deck too risky, so she was taken into the water by a Coast Guard diver, a rescue swimmer, who swam her to the rescue basket. They were lifted together to the aircraft, and she was flown to Scripps Memorial Hospital in La Jolla. She underwent emergency neurosurgery for the evacuation, for the evacuation of a large epidural bleed, and a second surgery to address facial and cranial fractures. The surgeries have been successful in stabilizing Ann's conditions, the statement says. She remains sedated in Scripps Memorial in the neurological treatment unit in intensive care. And the family asks that they give them privacy as the healing continues. And all of us connected with yacht racing, I'm sure, especially here on the West Coast, and of course us here at Sailing Illustrated, wish both of these folks a speedy recovery, and especially Ann, who it's obviously a serious accident, a serious incident, as we watch the end of this. Amazing. Just an amazing job the Coast Guard does, rescuing people at sea. And I don't know how the cost of these things get adjudicated, but it's your tax dollars at work, basically, our tax dollars at work, and full marks to all involved. Okay, let's move on. As the end of this video, the Coast Guard medevacing Ann Walton Teeter from the yacht Amazing Grace, and best wishes from all of us to her, her family, and to the crew of Amazing Grace. Okay, the other boat, Bretwalda 3, the Rogers 46, is the boat on which Casey Schilling had his accident when he got his leg wrapped up in a sheet, apparently. And fine-looking boat. Its port of call is Detroit. I have Siri talking to me, looking, saying, I found something about Casey Schilling. Okay, Casey, you're famous, at least with Siri. But the boat apparently out of Detroit, although it's listed as Rogers 46, as we said, out of Waikiki Yacht Club. Detroit on the back of that boat. In any event, Aaron Gatling, his wife, has been keeping us posted almost from the get-go. We appreciate that, Aaron, very much. And we've been getting the word out because a lot of people in SoCal know these folks. They're formerly members of Balboa Yacht Club, very popular by all accounts. I don't recall having met them, but perhaps I did in my various times at that club where I'm proudly a member. And Casey there in the wheelchair was released from hospital a couple days ago. They thought for a while that his sciatica nerve was going to be damaged, maybe not beyond repair, but it was going to be seriously damaged. But it turns out only to have been bruised. He's going to have a cast on or a splint for some time as he learns to get the nerve and the muscles all working again so he can walk. And best wishes to Casey and, of course, Aaron on a speedy recovery. Okay, let's move on to the Volvo Ocean Race. As you all know, the leg from Newport to Cardiff ended with Team Brunel, one of the two Dutch teams, winning leg 9. We reported that last week. But the two red boats, Mapfre and Dongfang, are at the top of the leaderboard. But just behind, Brunel is just behind these two. Let's go look at the leaderboard because there are two legs left. The leg that starts this Sunday from Cardiff around, we'll show you the course in a moment, from Cardiff around to Gothenburg, Sweden. But there's only 3 points separating the top 3 teams. Axo Nobel in 4th, Vestas 11th Hour Racing, the ostensible American entry, American/Danish entry, are out of the hunt now. But Dongfang is leading ahead of pre-race favorite Mapfre by just 1 point, and followed by Team Brunel, who've come on strong in the last 3 legs and only 3 points back. So there's no more double point scoring. If you win this next leg, you get 7 points. And if you're second, you get 6 points. So there's 1 point delta, just as you would expect. And if you're third, you, of course, get 7, 6, 5 points. So anything could happen, especially with probably Mapfre and Dongfang at the top of the leaderboard. But Team Brunel is still in the hunt, as they say. Okay, leg 10 starts Sunday. It's a 1,300 nautical mile leg around the British Isles, leaving them to starboard and finishing in Göteborg, Sweden, the home of Volvo cars. And it's 1,400 on Sunday is the start, with the import race, press conference Friday, import race Saturday, the usual deal. Okay, then leg 11, the final leg, starts on June 21st, which is a Thursday. Why June 21st? Well, Julia, you probably know the answer to that.
Yes. Midsummer's Night.
Exactly. Midsummer's Night in Northern Europe particularly is a big holiday. It's the longest day of the year, and when you're living that far north, it's a bit of a deal because you have daylight virtually all day. A little dark, a little dim, I should say, between midnight and 3 in the morning, say. But they're not starting at midnight. I talked to Peter Rush just before, texted with Peter Rush, who's the PR guru, our longtime friend for the Volvo Ocean Race, and he tells us that race will start as per normal at 1400 at 2 o'clock on June 21st, which is a holiday, so they should have a big crowd down there at the starting line on the 21st. That's 2 weeks from this Thursday for the final 11th leg from Göteborg down around Aarhus off Denmark, and that coincidentally is where World Sailing is running, not anytime soon, but in August, the so-called World Championship, World Sailing Championships, which is a whole nother kettle of fish. Around a mark there, and then to Den Haag, The Hague, as we would say in English, to The Hague in the Netherlands, which is the finish, the final stop. That's 700 nautical miles. So 2 legs left, no double points. It's going to be close. It could be very interesting indeed, and we'll be watching the live feeds. The live streams have been excellent. Andy Green calling it. He gets all excited. Andy is, you'd think this was the second coming of you-know-who, or Ben-Hur or something. They get so excited. I wish we would cover sailing like they cover golf and tennis.
In what way?
It's just nice and relaxed, and this is an upscale, cool sport. And when you start shouting and screaming about boats that are going, 10 knots, 12 knots, 15 knots around some buoys in the bay, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's physically challenging. It's mentally challenging. It's a chess match on the water. This is not NASCAR. It's just, I don't know. Okay, that's my personal opinion and bias, as you all know. Okay, so who are these gentlemen, and what is their connection to the Volvo Ocean Race? It was announced last week, a story that we broke here on Sailing Illustrated weeks ago and confirmed while we were in Newport, that Richard Brisius and Johan Salén, both Swedes, who have been the co-CEOs really since the gentleman, the previous CEO, stepped down just before the start of the race. Mark Turner, the British Mark Turner, not the Kiwi Mark Turner, formerly of our teammate on Oracle Team USA, the boat builder extraordinaire. But the British Mark Turner stepped down. Richard Brisius and Johan Salén, sports marketing guys from Sweden, took over. And these guys have been around for a while. They are not new to all of this. They are actually, the name of their company is Alant Ocean Racing, and that's the new company, actually, Atlant Ocean Racing Spain, led by Richard and Johan. And Jan Litborn will take over the Volvo Ocean Race from Volvo Group and Volvo Cars, the co-owners of the event for the past 20 years. Brisius, Salén, and Litborn have extensive experience in the premier round-the-world race, having worked with 7 Volvo Ocean Race campaigns over the past 28 years. Brisius and Salén started as sailors in the 89-90 race before finding success as team managers, including winning efforts with EF Language and Ericsson 4. Most recently, they managed Team SCA, the all-female entry, in the last edition of the race. So I think that's cool. I think that's good. And I'm delighted that Volvo is getting out of the event management business, because, as you know, I've had a lot to say about that. That's the statement I just read. And I'm happy that the organizers of the race I'm also happy that they're considering having 2 classes of boats during the 2021 event. And I'm told this is well down the track. It's all but done, all but a done deal. Potentially with the existing Volvo 65s, well, I think there's no question they're going to stick with those boats. They are robust. They've served the event well. They're a little too wet for my liking, and I think purposely wet. But a second class yet to be determined competing in the same race. Well, we're pretty sure we know what that second class is. It is the IMOCA 60 will be the second VOR class in 2021. Now you can see this is a foiler. It's not a full foiler. It's not going to launch it out of the air. But this is a box rule that the Vendée Globe uses this class, the Route du Rhum, and several other single-handed and double-handed races.
Wow.
A fully crewed version of the boat is 4 or 5 sailors. I suspect they'll go with maybe 4, but 5 as the second VOR class in 2021. And I think this will be a popular decision. It's a swing keel boat, and it's a box rule, so the boats aren't identical. There's a little bit of a design element, which I think will also help attract many more entries into the Volvo Ocean Race 2021. Now, you say that's the same time as the America's Cup. Well, the Cup will be over in March 2021. This will start presumably in October, again in Alicante, because that contract continues, or so I'm told. But Volvo said in this same release when they announced the sale, they said after 20 years, we feel that it is time to hand over responsibility for this prestigious competition to a new and capable owner with the experience and know-how needed to develop it further. Bjorn Anwal, the senior vice president at Volvo Cars, said, and continued, Volvo Cars will continue to support the next edition of the race as a sponsor with special focus on sustainability. Well, of course,
It's great for them.
Great for them, great for the event. And as Julia said before we went there, it's great to know that Volvo Cars is continuing in their sponsorship. Now, whether Volvo Trucks, better known as Volvo AB, the car company is actually owned by a Chinese holding company. But whether Volvo Trucks, Penta, the marine engine division, I suspect they will stay involved. It seems to make sense. But we shall see. In the meantime, Sailing Illustrated awards our Bravo Zulu, and you all know what Bravo Zulu in naval parlance is, well done, congratulations. This week's Bravo Zulu goes to Volvo Cars for both staying in the event, but also turning the management of the event over to professional event managers rather than having the sponsor themselves sponsoring the event, which, as you know, Julie, we have said, okay, I'll get closer. Julie's reminding, I'll get closer, which we've all said it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
You don't want Rolex running. In fact, Rolex doesn't want to run the Big Boat Series here in San Francisco, or this weekend's New York Yacht Club Regatta, the 164th annual that we'll talk about in a sec. Okay, so what do we have for comments? Let's stop here. A pause for the cause.
Marcus Weinstein.
Let's thank and welcome. So Janice Davis, hello from your mom. Thanks, Mom. One of our most loyal readers, watchers, fans. Jay Hanfield, Tom, the IC-37 is an impressive boat. She is the next big thing. I think I put a photo of the IC-30. Yeah, I did later in the show. Oh, Ted Ryman says, I'm an Englishman living in Cape Town. So he comes on every week from one of our favorite towns. I hope your water situation is improving, Ted. I know your wine situation is great out there to the east in Stellenbosch. I've spent some time out there at meetings at that, what used to be a Stouffer's Inn, a big resort hotel out there in Stellenbosch. Wayne Schreck is back in Utah. Hello, Wayne, one of our big backers of Sailing Illustrated. Jay Hanfield, hi, guys. Oh, you've repeated that comment, Jay, about the IC-37. Don Lunabos is in Sonoma, as usual. I hope the sailors are doing better. Yes, we all do. And thanks to, as Don says, to the Coast Guard. Wow, what a close call. What can you say? The Coast Guard, you've all seen, what was the name of that movie about the Coast Guard swimmer and the dramatic tension between the top star, former college swimming star, played by I can't even remember whom. Yeah. And then he goes at it with the crusty old, swimming instructor, and they go out and make dramatic rescues, and they fail, and somebody dies, frankly, it's a fabulous film. And those of you, somebody on here will remember. David James, when watching that video, one earns even more respect for the Coast Guard. Indeed. Rick Hayes, Brett Waldo spent many years on the Great Lakes. It hasn't raced on Lake Michigan or Huron in years. So That's why I guess its home port is still Detroit, or at least it says on the transom. But I believe it was listed out of, I can't remember now if it was Cal Yacht Club or out of, one boat was out of Cal Yacht Club, the other out of Waikiki, of the two that got involved in the accidents. Marcos is reminding us it's Volvo, not Volvo. I've owned Volvos. Leslie and I had Volvos for a long time before we moved to Europe. And I don't know, Volvo? Sorry, Marcos, thanks for correcting me. Jay Hanfield, amen. When Kenny Reed does the coverage, it's more cerebral. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate Andy's, you're talking about my comments about Andy Green. I appreciate the professional job he does, and he's one of the best in the sport. And I know he's being encouraged to become almost pyrotechnical in these pronouncements. No pun, no alliteration intended. But why can't it be a little more cerebral, as you say? Why can't we have a little more Kenny Reed and a little less, like the soccer guys? He shoots, he scores. I mean, excuse me, guys. This is yacht racing. This is sailing. Jay Hanfield, having raced in a Mocha, they need to retro the boats for a full crew. It will be interesting to see what the team would want to be on the wet 60. Oh, what team would want to be on the wet 65 versus the drier Imoca? That's an interesting point. That's an interesting question. The Guardian, Manuel Gomez. Yes, that was the name of the movie. Thank you, Manuel. That was the name of the Coast Guard movie. It was The Guardian, and really these guys and gals.
Alan.
Sorry, go ahead.
Alan McGarry.
Alan McGarry from Prague. He's in Prague, our friend from Toronto, from Canada, chairman of the upcoming Canada's Cup. Alan, we got to get Alan on the show. Marcos made a earthy joke. He loved my vulva, too. Okay, Volvo. Okay, Volvo. Thank you, Marcos. We'll stick on that. Okay. World sailing. This madness that's going on now in Marseille is this fourth event. This is the World Sailing CEO, Andy Hunt, who is trying to turn sailing into rugby, the sport from which he comes, or FIFA in soccer. Sailing is not, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of other people, that's not what kind of sport ours is and never will be. This is a video, this event, the fourth of these World Cup Series events in Marseille, that has started today. You could say the same thing about some of these videos. Okay, I know the kids like, younger people, the millennials, so on, like these hot, youngish videos, fast, changing, quick cuts, but I don't get it. Sailing is beautiful. You wouldn't present, well, maybe you would. I don't know. Maybe I'm just old. So how many North American teams are sailing in this World Cup Series event just starting today in Marseille? None in the 470. These are teams from Canada, Mexico, and the USA. One in the 470 women, one in the fin, one in the laser, none in the radial, one in the NACRA 17, Riley Gibbs and Louisa Chafee, who are one of our top two NACRA teams. None in the RSX men, and none in the RSX women. So a total of what? 4 teams in the 8 classes that are racing in Marseille. Now you'd say, is that croutonic? Is that weird? What is going on? Well, this series it doesn't mean much. It doesn't qualify you for the Olympics 2020 in Japan. That's the regatta in Aarhus coming up in August, where all the Olympic classes plus kiting, I wonder why that is, all the Olympic classes plus kiting, which I remind you is not in the 2020 Olympics, they will all be having what in effect is their world championship in Aarhus, the Netherlands, in what's called World Sailing's World Championship, which they do every 4 years in the middle of the Olympic quadrennium. Is that a good idea? Yeah, I think it is. But you force all the Olympic classes together in one place. It's a hugely expensive and difficult regatta to host. And the idea was to create the World Cup Soccer, FIFA, World Cup Rugby. It ain't going to happen. Sorry. I give this guy full marks. You know who this is. We're going to get him on the show. Malcolm Page, the chief of USA Olympic Sailing, because he basically said, why do we spend the money, send coaches and a bunch of sailors, unless they, like I assume Riley Gibbs and Louisa Chafee said, well, we want to go. Okay, great. But he said, don't send a lot of boats. Don't spend a lot of money and coaches on this event because, frankly, it's croutonic, to use our favorite word.
I don't think he used that word.
He probably didn't, and I'm sure he didn't. But it's my favorite word, as you all know, and I think anybody, including World Sailing, why they continue to try to put this regatta on is madness. Okay, now, just before air, you may wonder, I wondered, why are the 49er, the other two Olympic classes, only 8 of the 10 are there, why no 49er and 49er FX? Well, I got an email from Ben Remacher just before airtime, who's Ben, as you probably know, is the 49er and 49er FX class manager, as well as the NACRA class manager. And he said, hi, Tom, and this is very instructive, and I think Ben is spot on here. He says, the fleet members decided, meaning the 49er fleet members, decided to skip the event and train in Aarhus, that's up in Denmark, instead. That's where that World Championship is happening in August of the Olympic classes. They've been running a coaches regatta in Aarhus the past few days. Cool, okay, so the coaches are up there racing. I don't know where the sailors are. It's a very, now he's talking generally, it's a very crowded and busy calendar, forcing teams to make choices as they plan their schedules. The Sailing World Cup Final is basically, that is this series, just basically a made-up regatta. And since qualifying rules are tricky, teams don't qualify until very close to it, and it's short and expensive to attend. I guess our guys just took a pass, meaning the 49ers and the women's class, which is the 49er FX. You'll notice very few fleets in Marseille, he means. Very few fleets are full, and so there's likely a similar sentiment in other fleets as well, just expressed more clearly by the skiff fleet. Right on. I mean, and especially his last paragraph. Ben says, our official position, that is the 49er class, is that World Sailing can continue to run all the regattas they want, but neither them nor us should be compelling sailors to attend regattas. The regattas, and this is the key sentence, the regattas should be compelling on their own basis, or not. Amen. And I couldn't agree more, and I've never seen it put so well. Ben, thank you for your email, and I think you're spot on. And as Paul Henderson would say, World Sailing, when it was ISAF and IYRU before that, was a service organization for the sailors. It helped providing services to sailors, not running regattas, left that up to the classes and the clubs, who are particularly good at it and should be good at it. Okay. Now, as to the numbers, you see Ben referring to it here in his email. How many teams are there actually in the 8 classes? How many sailors are competing in Marseille in this regatta that starts today? We'll have a look at this video. I don't get it. In other words, 218 sailors in 8 classes. I should have gotten that graphic up before we lost the video, but that's what it is. 218 sailors in 8 classes. How many were there last week in the Finn World Masters, the old GOAT regatta? The Finns, prestigious, fantastic regatta they ran off of near Barcelona, El Baliz in Spain, Baliz. Fully 352 sailors from 32 countries. They've only got 34 countries in 8 classes at this other event. And if there ever was justification and explaining, showing how right Ben Remacher is, let the classes and the clubs run events, World Sailing, run the Olympics, run this World Sailing Championship, which I think's probably a pretty good idea, every 4 years in the middle of the Olympic quadrennium. I get it. Okay, let's do that. But all these other things are crazy. The sponsors don't sponsor them. The sailors don't go. It's hugely expensive. Yada, yada, yada. Paris 2024, the Olympic classes thing, this farce continues. This decision that World Sailing took, which was a camel of a committee decision, and it's ridiculous. It's being widely panned, continues to be, by people all over the world, because especially of these bottom 5 events. Well, not the windsurfer. I'm glad they're keeping the windsurfer. I think that's good. But the so-called mixed events, where there's going to be a male and a female racing in different events and combining their scores, both in the single-handed and in the kite. And I hear the kiters are not at all happy. No surprise. And somehow this will get sorted out. This will not persist. And I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised to see that U.S. Sailing, based on a conversation I had with the president in Newport, Rhode Island, a couple weeks ago during the Volvo stopover, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. You're going to see U.S. Sailing stepping up, the Royal Yachting Association and others saying, excuse me, World Sailing, we're the owners of World Sailing. We, the national authorities, we, the classes, we, the sailors. You work for us, not the other way around. I hope so. Because this list of events for the 2024 Olympics is ridiculous. It'll be changed, I hope. They're already out they put a tender out this week asking for people interested in being this single-handed event, these single-handed events, for new equipment. Because World Sailing wants to have new equipment that they can control, that they can clip the ticket on, that they follow the money. When there's a ridiculous decision in the sport, or probably in life, all you have to do is follow the money. Mr. Anderson, Mr. Kim Anderson, the president, he's from Denmark. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Anderson. I'm sure he's a fine guy. I'm sure he's busting his pick for the sport. But you, sir, get the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Award of the week, if not the month, if not the year, you and your CEO, Andy Hunt, because World Sailing is... this is a fustercluck of magnificent proportions. And I'm sorry, that's my personal opinion. It's probably the opinion of a lot of you watching, but World Sailing gets the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Award of the year, if not more. So far. Yeah, I'm just looking at Jay's comments, Jay Hanfield, who's in Newport, Rhode Island, last I knew. He says, no flashy video will save the sport from Andy and his crew, meaning Andy Hunt. Do you know what Paul Henderson calls him? He calls him Attila the Hunt, because he's so dictatorial. And he's come from rugby after a stint of 4 years at the British Olympic Association, where he and his marketing guy were excused because they had grandiose plans and couldn't raise the money. Now he and his marketing guy at World Sailing. In any event. No flashy video will save the sport from Mr. Hunt and his crew at World Sailing from the impending death. Well, it's not going to die. I mean, let's don't get carried away. They are running out of money. We reported that weeks ago, and I hear that continues to be a major concern. The U.S. isn't the biggest player in the world when it comes to sailing, but U.S. Sailing as an organization needs to leverage any power it has left to try and save the sport from rugby. I hope Paul Henderson's taking notes. Good stuff. We had more sailors at the New York Yacht Club Leukemia Cup last weekend in Newport, Rhode Island. There's more sailors at regattas all over the world every weekend. Fuster Cluck, Marcos says. Yes, did I pronounce that correctly, Marcos? Volvo. Fuster Cluck. Volvo is not a Fuster Cluck. Congratulations to Volvo Whiskey Tango Foxtrot to World Sailing. Okay, this is a gentleman who's made some good progress. You all know who that is. This is Grant Dalton, of course, the CEO of Emirates Team New Zealand. They are setting up a company in New Zealand called ACE, America's Cup Events Limited. He was interviewed on New Zealand radio a few days ago on the morning show with Mike Hosking, and it's well worth the listen. It's audio only, but you're going to learn a lot if you listen to this interview by Mike Hosking of Grant Dalton from a couple days ago.
Further developing news this morning, as we've mentioned, at 23 minutes away from 8, we had the announcement this morning that the broadcasting rights for the America's Cup Defence of 2021 have gone to TVNZ and News Talk ZB. The most obvious aspect of that, of course, is the whole thing is free to air. Team New Zealand's Grant Dalton is with us. Very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Now, the deal itself in terms of free to air, how critical, how important was that to you at Team New Zealand?
Oh, it's been one of our cornerstones since we won the Cup. We've always felt that it never felt right to us that you shouldn't be able to watch it unless you paid for it. So not only will it be free-to-air TV, free-to-air radio, or effectively radio is always free, but a partnership with TVNZ, but also digitally free as well. We want it to be available anywhere, anytime, and this is the first deal that's been done is this, and they'll roll out now all over the world because it's a philosophy that we have not only ourselves but also Luna Rossa, our challenger of record, on behalf of the challengers.
So how does it work internationally? Is there an international broadcaster that will put pictures and sound out to the world, or is this all in the hands of TVNZ and News Talk ZB?
No, not at all. We'll put the production team together. At this stage, we don't envisage necessarily employing any big production company. A lot of things like the virtual, the graphics as such, that'll involve people like Ian Taylor out of Dunedin. They've done amazing work within our space and in the sport and a lot of other sports, and that'll end up being housed in New Zealand. So we'll produce the signal, and then it'll go out all over the world.
In wanting things free to air, did that compromise you commercially?
No, it's a fair question, and I was just saying this to someone else, that we see TV and digital as a cost centre, not a profit centre. And that's a fairly fundamental decision you got to make up front, because our whole philosophy when we won is to get this out to as many people. And I think we're suffering a little bit that over recent cups it hasn't been all over the world like Kiwis would have been led to believe, because it's been pay to air and often doesn't go anywhere because you're not on that pay to air channel anywhere in any particular country. Canal Plus in France would be an example, 8% of the market. So we're not compromised, completely the opposite, because we went into it with our eyes open, and we know, with the help of the New Zealand government, for example, that it's a cost centre, and that's how it should be for us. It's a fundamental philosophy.
All right, good. You'll be well aware yesterday the news was here as well that Lingy is not part of this. Are you now worried we don't have enough challengers to make up a good contest?
I could have told you 9 months ago that Lingy wasn't going to be part of it because, he doesn't like what we're doing, and those guys tend to take the toys away. No, I'm not. We only have 6 bases. Originally, when we planned out further into the harbour, we had more bases. Now we only have 6. And so we can't take any more than that anyway. So it's not really a chicken and egg, but we've got till November the 30th until that closes down. and already we only got a couple left.
And will you fill those two?
No, it's hard to know. I mean, I can give you 3 or 4 emails every single day of a team that's going to enter. There's probably 3 of those teams that I am communicating with, and others are as well, that I would rate as real, possibly real. So then you say, well, you might be being optimistic. Let's take 1 off, probably another 2. So in theory, yes. But I think one of the things I'm finding, and this is not a cop-out, that there's a lot of damage in the Cup, more than I expected. And I think we've got a bit of rebuilding to do as well.
In what sense? What happened? You're talking about Ellison and Co. out of Bermuda.
Well, I'm talking. We'll use free-to-air as a good example. We want free-to-air. We want it everywhere. But in a pay-to-air environment, New Zealand is a unique example in that, because people will watch it on pay-to-air because they love the America's Cup. But if you live somewhere where you can't get it, you physically can't get it, because that pay-to-air channel also holds the digital rights, and you're not a digital right. You're not a pay subscriber.
Yeah.
You can't see it at all,
no.
period. France was a great example. 8% of the market was Canal Plus, who had the digital rights as well. You couldn't watch the last America's Cup in France. So it's that philosophy has done some damage all over the world.
So you get the idea, and this goes on for a bit, but this deserves at least honorable mention in Bravo Zulu, because this is a great decision. I'm delighted that they're back free to air. I have always advocated that it's better for sponsors, better for the event, and that trying to carve off a little bit of revenue from a television product that's difficult. And of course, Larry and Russell they hoped that this would become a big deal and a big television. But people are interested in the people, not the boats, and they really don't care what kind of boats they are. They're interested in the people, and the way you get people interested in the people is to have live television, and lots of live television, whether it's this kind of live television like our live stream, or it's network, or it's cable, whatever. And the Challenger of Record agrees. Do you know who this is?
I do.
You do. That is Laurent Esquier, formerly, long time ago, of France, now living in the USA, and he has recently been named as the COR 36, Challenger of Record 36, CEO for Prada and the other teams. So he is in charge of organizing the Prada Cup and the pre-regattas leading up to the Prada Cup, and representing the challengers as a group to the Defender. And I've known Laurent, whose nickname is Leroy, for 30-plus years. He sailed with the French way back in, I think, 74, in the 70s in Newport. Great guy, highly experienced. I think along with Bruno Troublé and myself have done as many cups as anybody else on the planet. And he knows everybody, and he speaks Italian and French as well as English. Is married to an old friend of mine from the Great Lakes who I grew up sailing against, Lisa Esquier, obviously, and they've got three delightful kids, and are living in Rhode Island. And Laurent had this to say about the Challenger of Record, about the television on behalf of the Challenger Record. As the COR for the 36th America's Cup, we are pleased to jointly sign this agreement with TVNZ and the Defender. It is the first broadcast rights agreement to be signed, and exemplifies our commitment to ensuring wide-reaching broadcast and digital coverage of the America's Cup, both in New Zealand and globally, or so said Laurent Esquier, CEO of the Challenger of Record for America's Cup 36. So good on you, Leroy. Good on you, Mr. Dalton. And I think this is a good first step. Now, as to how many teams, you heard Grant Dalton say he thinks there maybe are another 3 teams in addition to the 4 they already have. Now, the 4, of course, are the Defender, Ben Ainsley's British team, Ineos, Team UK, not GB, Team UK, the American team, American Magic, representing the New York Yacht Club, and, of course, the Challenger of Record, which is the Italian team, Prada Luna Rossa, representing CVS, Club Vela de Sicilia.
Pretty good.
CVS. We can remember it because we have the CVS pharmacy drugstore, drug chain here in the U.S., so that's how I remember CVS, Club de Vela, di Vela, di Sicilia, Sicily. Those are the 4 teams. There are potentially 3 others. You heard Grant Dalton refer to them, and they would be the second American team, which has gone pretty quiet, frankly, although they're still working. I know that they're still working. Mike Buckley and co. There is a team from Sardinia who, frankly, I don't think has a chance, a snowball's chance, of getting off the ground because they just don't have the resources, the time. They've got a lot of interest, and it's a marina, it's a boat building company that hopes to get involved in the Cup. It's tough. And then there's a Norwegian team that's also run a trial balloon, a flag up the pole, and it'd be great if Norway was in. There's a lot of money in Norway. It's one of the wealthiest per capita countries in the world, North Sea oil, and on and on and on. But I wouldn't hold my breath. I think there are going to be 4 teams. And notwithstanding what Mr. Bainton, Joe Bainton wrote, our other longtime friend from the Star class and lawyer, and has helped with various previous America's Cup litigations. Joe wrote in Scuttlebutt, I guess it was, either last night or it's in today. I can't remember. I've seen his letter. He's reminiscing for the 12-meter era, as do I, do a lot of us, right? Julia, you probably, right?
Oh, I do. It's so beautiful. Yeah.
The beautiful boats. But the world moves on. These, assuming they work, and these guys and gals are very smart on these 2 design teams, and they would not have pushed this down the track if it weren't going to work. And they'll make it work. And we're going to have 4 very well-funded, very well-organized teams. And I think it bodes well for the next Cup. Richard Gladwell. Adelasia de Torres has just announced team is confirmed for AC 36 and accepted by Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron. Richard, that's great news. Adelasia de Torres, is that the group from Sardinia? Richard Gladwell put a comment on here for us. Has just announced the team is confirmed for AC 36 and accepted by Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron. Well, that's great news. Having said that, how many times have I run the Cup where I received challenges? 1, 2, 3, at least 3 times, 4 times maybe. And I can tell you that there's always a number of teams that file challenges that don't then follow through. Hopefully that's not the case for this Adelasia de Torres.
Sardinia.
Yeah, that must be the Sardinian team. Looking forward to the Farallons race on Saturday. Thanks, Alex Kent. But back to the America's Cup. Yes, it is the Sardinian Challenge. Well, again, I hope they make it. And I just, it cuts both ways because they're getting a late start. They probably are not going to be very well funded. So if they really do make it to the starting line, they buy a design package from Team New Zealand. They do it. You'd almost rather have 4 really strong teams than 4 strong teams and 1, so-so. Patrick Dyer says, yes, this is correct. Heard this on the radio half an hour ago. So while we've been to air.
Gladwell's posted a story.
Sorry?
Gladwell's posted a story.
Yeah, I'm sure Richard's got the news, and we'll look forward to it, and we'll put it up on our website. We'll run Richard's story right after we get off the air here. And Richard, if you send us a link in the comments, I can even go to it. But
I have it here.
You have the link to the story?
Yeah.
Seymour. Okay, good. Marcos Weinstein says, Grant Dalton is a fine steward of the sport. Repair the image of the Cup around the world. It'll take a cycle or 2, but should get back to the preeminent event it truly is. Jay Hanfield says, love Grant's honesty. The Cup is damaged. As a guy who grew up watching the 12s in Newport, I hope the Cup gains back its old relevance. David James, he said, there's more. He's talking about the Marseille event. There are more sailors in your average Corinthian Yacht Club, which is one of the fine clubs here on the bay, on a Friday night race. Richard Gladwell's story is up at sail-world, sail-world.com/news/206135. You can see that in the comments below. And yeah, I could probably go to that, but we'll put that up afterwards. I want to go look at it. Maybe Richard, I'll give you a call on Skype. We could probably Skype to him right now, but let's wrap this up because we've got some other news. That's great. Well, I'm glad to hear they have filed, and hopefully they will come to fruition. And if they come to fruition, I hope they are really strong, because you don't want 4 strong teams and a weakling, especially from a second team from a country from which you already have a team, Italy. But we'll see. I mean, if they're from Sardinia, and if they've gotten some kind of connection from Yacht Club Costa Smeralda, the Aga Khan's club, they're in the northeast corner outside Olbia in Porto Cervo. There's a lot of wealthy folks and a lot of keen interest in yacht racing. Remember, Azzurra from that club, Yacht Club Costa Smeralda, first Italian challenger from YCCS in '83 in Newport. And then they were the challenger of record for that fabulous event in '87 in Frio. That is Yacht Club Costa Smeralda, yeah. And there were 2 Italians. The Yacht Club Italiano was also a challenger there from Milano, from Portofino. And they did a marvelous job. So there's a lot of history and tradition. In fact, at Yacht Club Costa Smeralda, right out on the point, kind of between the club and the harbor, is one of their old 12 meters up on display. It's like a sculpture. It's fantastic. The Italians are very passionate about the cup and the sport. It's, along with the French, you've got to say they're the 2 top sailing nations in the world. You walk through an airport with Cayard, as I've done in Nice or in Monaco or some other cities. And, Paul is, even to this day, having sailed with Raul Gardini and his mustache, he's a famous sportsman. Not so much here in the U.S. Dennis Conner, you walk through an airport with Dennis, people still recognize him from people of a certain age, from Time Magazine, from Sports Illustrated, from the famous picture with Ronald Reagan and so on. This week, St. Francis Yacht Club, Julia and I will be over there tomorrow doing the live stream on Facebook.com/St. Francis Yacht Club, 12:30 Pacific tomorrow. If you missed last week's show, it's up on the St. Francis Yacht Club website. It's public. It's also on the Facebook page. But you can go to either the St. Francis Yacht Club's very, very nice website and look under events and look under Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. Janice Couvreau, the author of Sail Cowabunga, gave a fascinating talk about their 10 years at sea with her 2 young kids and her husband on a boat called Cowabunga, hence the name of the book, Sail Cowabunga, a family's 10 years at sea. And, of course, one of her sons, the elder of the 2, is Sean, a.k.a. Doogie, better known to most of us as Doogie. He is a professional sailor of considerable repute, having done the 2007 Cup with the French team Arriva, because Janice is married to a French man, a French fellow, and they all speak French in their homes, not only in the Couvreau home, but also Sean Doogie Couvreau says that he and his family and kids speak French at home as well. Nice. That's St. Francis Yacht Club's Wednesday Yachting Luncheon tomorrow. Sorry, that was last week. The book that I was just talking about with Janice Couvreau. Tomorrow is a horse of a different color. It's about boating, but it's about Carlo Facchino, who is an endurance athlete. He's an Ironman. He calls himself a survivalist, an ultramarathoner. And he and 4 crewmates rowed this boat called Polar Row. Good name, eh? Rode from the northern tip of Norway, Tromsø, all the way to bloody hell, to Iceland, and encountered all sorts of difficult things along the way. And he will be speaking tomorrow about that trip during the summer of 2017. Carlo Facchino at the St. Francis Yacht Club. Wednesday Outing Live, which we, as always, will live stream here. Not here, but on the club's Facebook page, St. Francis Yacht Club. Also happening, coming up this weekend, the oldest regatta in North America, the 164th annual regatta of the New York Yacht Club in Newport, Rhode Island, sponsored by AIG. New York Yacht Club's annual regatta was first run on July 17th, 1845, so pre-Civil War, on the Hudson River. 9 yachts started the 40-mile race, with the 45-ton Signet winning with an elapsed time of 5 hours and 26 minutes. The race was run in or near New York City until 1988, when the club purchased Harbor Court, the old Brown mansion, from the Brown family. Grandpa Brown was, of course, a Commodore back in, the 50s? Was a New York Yacht Club Commodore, and famously good sailing family. And they sold the Brown Mansion to the New York Yacht Club for the then princely sum of $4 million. And, of course, it was the last uncondominiumized big mansion on Newport Harbor. And the club got it. We all made whatever donations we could to a capital campaign that Commodore Bob Stone ran. And it is now this magnificent facility, 30 years old. It's hard to believe. It's been 30 years since 1988. And the scene of this weekend's 164th annual regatta. The regatta is a 3-day event. It's around the Connecticut Island race, which is always it's my favorite race in the world. I've always loved that race. You race around Connecticut Island, the island in the middle of Narragansett Bay, and it's challenging on both sides because you're normally going out the East Passage, into and around Beaver Tail, back up the other side, the west side of the island, and then finish again back in between Newport and Jamestown. And that's Friday. Then there's 2 days of course racing, Saturday, Sunday. One of the interesting features of the New York Yacht Club's annual regatta, because of the upcoming in 2019 12-meter World Championships, there's going to be quite a good turnout. Again, this class is on the rise. It's building, including here in the middle is Jack LaForte's Challenge 12, which is Challenge 12 was the ostensible trial horse. It was one of 3 Australian challengers in the 83 Cup. In fact, the names of the 3 boats were Advance, Challenge, Australia. It was a bit of a team effort. This boat, which was white, many of you will remember, in 83, is now black. Jack LaForte, I guess it's Jack Jr., owns it, and they've had it for a year or so and are tuning it up, working it up, and he says it was in fairly good shape when they bought it last year, as Jack LaForte says. But the goals last year were to sail and get it, get to know it, and when they painted it this winter, we went through some pretty major changes. We have some new appendages. We moved the mast position. We're hoping this year is sort of a breakout year relative to where the boat was last year. But there's Courageous, there's other U.S. boats, the other boats, and that fleet is growing and will be part of the New York Yacht Club's annual regatta this weekend. Challenge 12, which is one of 120 entries, wow, give or take. When I talked with Stuart Struley this morning, the very fine PR director, communications director for the Yacht Club, and if you figure that each of those boats has, an average of 8 sailors, 10 maybe, that's 1,000 sailors, yeah, at a weekend regatta in Newport, Rhode Island. The 164th annual regatta of the New York Yacht Club, the oldest regatta in North America, this weekend in Newport. Okay, good scene. Enjoy it. I hope hope you have more breeze than you did last weekend when this boat, the IC-37, the hull number 1, raced by Commodore Phil Lotz in New York Yacht Club's Leukemia Cup. the charity regatta started by Gary Jobson many years ago, of which there are, I don't know, a dozen, 16, maybe 20 around the country, the largest of which is here in San Francisco Bay, or has been of late, raising money for leukemia research. And I see the Invitational Cup hull number 1, IC 37, hull number 1, raced. This is a file photo. This is from a few weeks ago, earlier in the spring. But it raced last weekend in the Leukemia Cup at Newport, Rhode Island. Also coming up this weekend here on the West Coast is the Hydrofoil Pro Tour. These are the cutting-edge kiters, and we've got a couple of them really top-notch here from St. Francis Yacht Club. They're racing right out in front of the club, launching off Crissy Field. That's the beach between the yacht club and the foot of the Golden Gate Bridge. There will be, I don't know how many boats, 40, 50, 60 boats, boards. They call themselves riders, and the theme, the class says, for the riders, by the riders. They don't call themselves sailors. They call themselves riders. And this should be a fascinating... It looks like yacht racing. It looks like a notice of race or sailing instructions any of us have seen. It's hosted by one of the world's preeminent yacht clubs, by St. Francis. And they race basically windward lewards right here off the club in the reliably windy and iconically beautiful San Francisco Bay. The Hydrofoil Pro Tour. So these are kiteboards with hydrofoils. They're up out of the water. It's cool stuff.
Super fast.
Super fast. Okay, well, that pretty well wraps it up for this week's show. Any other comments, Julia?
A couple.
What we should look at here. Richard Gladwell gave us that comment. Thanks, Richard. Greg Newman says, llama. Makes a great team mascot. Okay, I know what that means. I had a conversation, Jay Hanfield says, with a builder in Newport this weekend, and the word is that Westerly Marine is struggling to keep up with the build numbers for the IC-37. Being a custom builder, they didn't think the orders would fill in so quickly. Word is that Barry Carroll is trying to get a builder in Rhode Island to be a third builder. Okay, well, I don't know about that. But the boat obviously does have great potential. It's fabulous, and with New York Yacht Club announcing a builder in Europe here a couple weeks ago, it'll be good. David James, it might be worth noting that San Francisco Yacht Club has raised the money in every Leukemia Cup the most money. That's right, since the first one. David Periga, thank you, Tom, from your friends in windy Pewaukee, up in Wisconsin, one of the great sailing parts of the world. David, thanks for it. Anything else, Julia?
No,
Are we done?
I think so.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week, same time, same channel, with Tuesdays with TFE.